Welcome to episode 2 of the Weekly Hijack. Everyone is here from the last episode, so we will spare you the introduction.
Yes, exactly.
Tonight we are talking about episodes 2 and 3 of season 1 of Lost, Tabula Rasa and Walkabout. We just finished Tabula Rasa, which is the first Kate-centric flashback episode. And I was saying before we even started this one, this is sort of the episode that everyone knows in between the pilot and the Walkabout, which are two of the seminal Lost episodes, and then there's this one.
And then there's this one, yes.
In between.
So right before we started recording, Zach here was saying that he was like, meh.
It's boring. But it would be, I think, it wasn't boring when I watched it the first time, but I know that the later stuff is more entertaining, and this is just setup, but like really surface level setup. So I'm not all that thrilled.
I loved it.
Well, you're wrong. I'm joking.
What did you love about it, Deb?
I just like seeing it all again. I love Hurley.
I do like her.
I love Hurley.
He doesn't even have to say much for you people at this point. He's like,
He's so different than everyone else.
yes.
Well, I thought what was interesting is, first off, so the first real episode is the Kate episode, which, a lot of people is most people's favorite character.
Yeah.
And sometimes people's least favorite character.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting they picked that as being the first one, and then
First character study.
first character setup, and this was written by Damon Lindelof. I made sure I checked as it was going through.
Which I guess you could say even that they sort of led up to it. You can almost say this is sort of they don't quite answer what Kate did exactly, but it's the first time you get insight into something like a question that had been brought up in the previous episode.
Because they really did, last episode they set that up, and then really the end of this episode set up Walkabout. I mean, they're like, and here we'll end with this scary Locke thing.
What's the deal with Locke?
What's the deal with the Locke?
And even dropped the hint with a wheelchair.
But I seem to have the sense, and I could be wrong, that many of the Kate episodes are written by Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse.
Really?
Yeah. I might be wrong. We'll have to check as we keep going. And I know, like in season 6 when they had the Kate episode and people were like, meh. I think Damon Lindelof liked that episode. I think though I get this a sense that he likes Kate as a character, that he's fascinated with this person who, is soft-hearted, but also is constantly running from things and lying and stuff. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't work. In some ways, she's like kind of your normal person. I mean, she has a lot of background, but she doesn't end up being a hero, or she doesn't end up being like in charge of the island. I mean, she's almost the only person besides Sawyer who gets off the island for good.
Yeah, it had been
of the original survivors.
Yeah, and Claire. Claire is another one.
Yeah, that's true.
Like,
yeah,
Sawyer, Claire, and Kate is about it. In terms of original survivors.
She got off both times.
Yeah.
Only person to get off twice.
Well, what's interesting about this episode, it is one of the most, it's along the lines of the most character-focused episodes to watch. There's not a whole lot of mythology. It's just, all of it is very based around, this, it's either, Kate as her flashbacks, and then it's dealing with the dead, or the dying Marshall. Yeah. And then Vincent and the hunt for Vincent and Michael and all that stuff. And none of it, like I said, really has anything to do with the island. It's just about these people. What? So in that sense, it's a very early instance of what the Lost Rider is saying. We've always been about the characters and the mystery stuff.
It's interesting. It's the first episode that really set up. First off, we're going to go use these flashbacks in a way that explores people's past, not just as we're going to talk about the crash. But I noticed two things. Early on, they sit down at this campfire, and they're like, we should tell people about this French transmission. And Saeed says, no, we shouldn't. And you're saying, are we saying we should lie? And lying is basically one of the main themes of Lost. I mean, basically, everything someone says, you're like, is that really what happened?
That's true.
So, I mean, and even Kate's,
which drives some viewer nuts.
Yeah. But I think it really does set up, even very early on, this idea that lying is basically bread and butter for Lost.
Interesting point, yeah.
And what was the one other thing I thought was... Oh, and then obviously Tabula Rasa, Fresh Start, which is, an ongoing thing. I mean, basically the whole show is like, can we start over? Can we be... It's interesting.
Yeah, it was really interesting. Jack saying, it doesn't matter who you were before. And it's like, well, it kind of does, because they wind up wrestling with who they were before throughout the entire show.
I thought that was interesting. I like that because he says we should fresh start, but the baggage they all have is what hounds them and drives the plot all constantly. And so when you get to season 6 and they're doing this, they're trying to like almost redo their life. It's like they're finally letting go of all that baggage that we've seen for the last
100 some episodes.
Yeah.
So it's a little underrated episode, but they still laying a lot of interesting groundwork for future
just how
stuff.
things work. And the tensions, it's harder now, second time view, the tension's not as much, but you're not like wondering, is Kate good, is Kate bad, which you might be thinking the first time.
That's true. So it loses a little bit, but your focus is a little different on the rewatch.
And it is interesting. A little thing like Sawyer goes and tries to take the Marshall out, but he misses because he's not really a killer,
Yeah.
And then he feels really bad about not doing it right,
Yeah.
So you got a lot of these people you have one view of, and then you get a little nuance.
Yeah, a little different. It's like yeah, because obviously Sawyer does have a soul. Like as much as like he's looting the plane and all that stuff, and he has a point in when he says, "Jack, you're not looking at the bigger picture here."
And that's another conflict, especially in season 1. How much are we going to be
the heroes, and how are you practical?
Yeah, how much are we going to just do what we want, or are we going to try to be civilized and whatever?
Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's
thoughts?
your Nick and Tim.
Yeah, sorry, we start off and Natasha, any thoughts about this episode? She rolled her eyes. She has no thoughts on the spot.
Zach already gave his opinion. Brianna,
who's watched this 6 times?
Is this an episode?
I was glad to see Claire and Charlie finally have their first.
That's true. At least
Very
their first
early on, yeah.
At least their first on-screen one.
Yes.
I guess later on you see that they had met a little earlier, but
Yeah, but I guess the first time that we see them together,
so
I shipped them pretty hard.
Yep. And we're first a little tease for the Michael and Son shippers, if there are any. There probably are.
There's some relationship there, anyways.
Yeah. Again, probably a plot thread that they didn't really pick up on later. Possibly.
And then, first instance of a boar without us actually seeing it.
Oh, I didn't even think about that being a boar.
Yeah, I think it was.
Oh, I assumed polar bear.
You think it was polar bear?
It probably wasn't, but that's what I thought.
I figured it was just a boar, which we get in. I think we'll get next episode with Walkabout because Locke kills it with his knives. I think
that's true. I bet they were leading you to think polar bear though, because I think there's not really any other polar bears loose on the island. I don't think.
No.
So, but yeah, having seen that, that's probably what they were trying to lead you to think towards. But all right, well, anyway, that's enough for Tabula Rasa. Walkabout is a big one, and we're going to get to that next.
They both wanted that. Well,
how is that?
Locke wants to get off the island, and Jacob's supposed to protect the island. The island is kind of the center of all.
And the smoke monster.
He's trying to escape.
Is the Man in Black.
Yeah.
But he can't escape as long as Jacob's alive, so he wants to kill Jacob, which can only be done by. Well, it gets very complicated by season 5.
One of these guys has to kill Jacob.
Yeah, basically.
So the smoke monster is trying to get these guys
on his side.
So they can kill Jacob.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So we just finished Walkabout, which is famous among the Lost fan community for being the one where they revealed, oh my goodness, Locke was in a wheelchair when he was on a plane, and now he's not.
What?
Crazy. No. Spoilers if you haven't been paying attention to that. Telling you that if you're listening to this podcast, that is a bad idea.
The interesting thing about watching Tabula Rasa and then Walkabout is it really, the two sides of the Lost. You got the very character-centric one, like we said. The Walkabout's like, and here's the crazy magic island stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot of, it's famous for the big Locke reveal, but there's a lot of things going on in here besides just Locke. But we said last time we realized we needed to be careful Nick and I don't dominate the conversation too much.
So, first thoughts from any of the other viewers?
I don't know. I forgot how bad I felt for Locke.
Oh, yes.
Because later on, you don't feel bad for him and so. He's a. Well, there are places where you do when the whole dad thing happens and the whole. Yeah, that's awful.
He's a sad little man.
That whole phone call with it was with Helen. It was just awful.
Yeah, he is a very tragic.
And he ends tragic too.
I know it's.
He basically is dead for the ending of 3 seasons.
Locke is, I think, one of the saddest stories in all of Lost. And I mean, I know there are a lot of people that really got really fed up with his fanaticism later on, but man, he lived a sad life.
It was.
Yeah.
Now, I've been years since I've watched it. I only watched it once, but I find these intro sessions or first 4 issues we've watched so far very interesting. You catch the small details that passed over you that later on, after you see the ending or other stuff later on, they make a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I find fascinating.
They kept whenever they played a idea, they tended to keep it.
Yeah, they
for
kept
a long time.
They're ridiculously consistent within themselves.
For being TV, it's remarkably consistent.
I mean, especially for as often as people accuse Lost writers of making stuff up, they stay very true to who these people are the entire time. You can say maybe some of the mystery stuff, and it's possible they change in the process, but they stayed very true to who these people are.
I want to know? Okay, so especially in these first couple, I'm sure the first couple more, they always go back to what happened right after they landed, after they crashed. You know, I mean, they have Locke here when he was standing up and stuff.
I don't know if they always do.
Yeah.
But they do other ones. So,
Seems
I wonder if
filming.
No, when they filmed it, did they know? I mean, because you got all that burning wreckage. I mean, as the set guys, you got all this burning wreckage. Like, do we gotta set this all up again? Or can you know what's all? I mean, I wonder if they knew all what was going on, so they.
That's a good question.
Filmed it all together.
I do believe they kept a lot of it. I think they might have gotten rid of some of it, especially after this last bit where they burned the fuselage. But I do seem to remember that they kept certain pieces in case they needed to invent flashbacks for it. Because like they would have needed it for like the Charlie's Greatest Hits episode where they go back and see Charlie and Claire having that conversation. I'm sure they hadn't filmed that yet.
No, but most of these flashbacks do show, I believe, what they were doing right before they got on the plane. No, they're all in Australia. I think almost all the flashbacks are in Australia, aren't they?
Well,
this season, maybe I could be. I don't remember.
Possibly. I mean, maybe toward the later in the season, probably not as much. But because I think, if I remember, isn't like the finale of the season? Doesn't it like show like Hurley running?
Yeah,
to get
they're
on
all
the plane?
actually getting on the plane. Yeah. I think
yeah.
that's this season. Any other thoughts?
Is the next episode Jack's episode?
It has to
I
be,
don't
doesn't
remember.
it? That's how they set it up.
That's
Yeah.
set up pretty solid.
They've been setting these ones up pretty well about that way. I mean, they kind of flow one to another.
So refresh my memory. The image of Jack's father appearing, that's the Man in Black?
I think that he actually confesses to that, if I remember correctly.
That sounds right.
It's one of those things that actually they said out loud.
Okay.
Which is not a lot of that. A lot of that stuff's very implied.
Right.
Generally.
Well, and I think they had to do something about Jack's father, especially since they established later on very much the whole dead is dead thing.
Yeah.
So they had to explain that, what that was all about.
Yeah, so in theory, Man in Black is both showing himself to Locke and trying to get him invested in a destiny, and appearing to Jack. Trying to figure out, hey, what are these guys can I work with?
And you kind of wonder, in retrospect, because we always assumed that Locke had seen the smoke monster.
Yeah.
I wonder if Man in Black had manifested himself in some other form to show Locke.
Yeah, you don't really know.
I mean, we have no idea, really. I mean, you remember at some point Locke says something along the lines of, I looked into the heart of the island and what I saw was beautiful.
Yeah.
And he didn't look terrified. I mean, he looked awestruck by whatever he saw. But not necessarily like, I don't think anyone would look into a dark smoke monster thing and say, ooh, that's pretty.
Exactly.
So I don't know. But yeah, Man in Black is all about trying to manipulate the survivors. And you see the seeds of that here.
Yeah, and so is Jacob, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
The whole, the reveal, is famous about he was in a wheelchair, but it's really well done. I mean,
it really is. Yeah. I mean,
it's obvious if you know. I mean, you show the toes, like, he talks about the story about the double amputee climbing Mount Everest, and you're like, okay, because, I mean...
And yeah, in retrospect, there's a lot of signs there. But it took a lot of people by surprise, and I've read several commenters saying this was the moment where they realized, wow, I have to keep watching the show.
And this is where, later on, if you want everything to be science, come on. It's a magic island.
Yeah, clearly.
So
But I mean, like I said earlier, they do a lot of things with a lot of different characters in there. Touch back on Charlie and his addiction. Still Michael being very struggling to be a dad.
you got a lot more of this Jack trying to solve everything.
Yeah, more Jack trying to solve everything, including Rose, which we haven't seen Rose in the last episode.
I mean, that is a large setup for basically season 2. Is that where they get to the tail end? Yeah.
Yeah, season 2. Yeah, yeah. And the first Charlie and Hurley pair up.
Yeah,
which
is great.
Which is fun. And several characters really meeting each other for the first time. I mean, we know these characters at the first point, but Claire introducing herself to Jack.
Kate climbed her tree for the first time. She climbs the trees a lot too.
Yeah, that's pivotal, I guess.
And then I was very excited. Locke uses catchphrase 5 times in this episode. Don't tell me what I can't do.
Yep.
Which is great.
Poor Locke. For as inspiring as he is, he's also just as demoralizing.
Yeah. I guess that's my quick take on it.
Yeah, that's all we got.
That's all we've got. That's my catchphrase, apparently.
All right, last chance. Anyone want to throw anything in here?
Real quick, I talked about it during. I know Tim's right
Anyone
about.
but me.
No, but I thought it was interesting. You know, I remember the first time I think watching, like, oh, he actually knows how to boar hunt, and then you don't. He doesn't know a thing about boar hunt, except he rattled off these giant things, and I was reading like this time. It's like he just memorized the book and he's explaining it, and it's very interesting to me when I was watching this, and I'm like, he's just rambling on. How do it's like even this like encyclopedic description? Oh, he is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's very nicely played.
Yeah. Again, because like the first time you think, and even I think even like in previous viewings, even though I had known that he had been in a
You
wheelchair,
thought maybe he knew something about knives and stuff.
yeah, you thought he was. But then the more you get to know his story and then watch it this time, is like he's putting on a really good act.
Yeah.
Basically, he doesn't know nearly as much as
He's
appears
like,
to.
the island gave me a chance. I'm gonna
Take it.
take it. Yeah.
Even means throwing a knife next to a guy to get everyone's
And he
attention.
could have practiced knife throwing. He probably had. done that.
That's probably true. Yeah, that's probably true.
All right,
Anyway,
I'm done now.
Travis?
Yes.
okay.
Don't tell me what I can do.
With that, this has been your latest installment of the Weekly Hijack. Thanks for listening.
Adios.